Hey everybody, welcome to the first ever episode of the first ever ATP podcast here on the channel. And I'm going to be calling it This Week in Overwatch League. A lot of people have been asking me to make a podcast literally for years now, and I myself have been wanting to for quite some time. It's just a matter of finding the right timing. And now that I finally feel a bit more comfortable with the content I'm making and the fact that I have a bit more time on my hands, we're going to give this a try. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a weekly thing. This is more so just an experiment with this pilot episode to see what people think. And we'll kind of go from there. Probably won't be hours and hours like a lot of other podcasts you'd see. It'll be a bit on the shorter side, but hopefully you'll still be entertained, as the purpose of this podcast is going to be to go over a lot of the biggest headlines that happened during the previous week of the league and things to pay attention to moving forward as we move into the next week. And we'll also talk about things you might have missed. I can talk about some of the notable things with the games and the players that I might not normally be able to get to from my actual videos because of time constraints and not just getting to everything I want to. And where I want to start today is with the Boston Uprising taking a 3-0 loss to the Vancouver Titans. That's probably the thing that is drawing the most headlines, the most news, the most reactions on social media. The fact that Boston got absolutely steamrolled by the Titans during the week. So, the question people are asking right now, because of this mean L they took, is, are the Boston Uprising boomed? We can talk about that a bit later, but for now, the game itself wasn't that close. I think that's why people are kind of going down this route. Boston struggled to get a foothold right from the start, maybe without the presence of Izzyaki, or maybe just because they had a poor grasp on the current changing meta, as there's less Winston, which means we have to see less Smurf. All I know is, after the first map, this series wasn't close, because as you can see, Blizzard World 1-0, Rialto 3-0, Boston got full held on maps 2 and 3, so it goes without saying that the Titans outplayed them greatly and looked far more in their element out there with Punk at tank. I'd say that the moment that Boston subbed in Kalios, the series really went to hell. I'm not saying that it's all his fault, but maybe it's a sign that Smurf's presence is integral for the team's success. The team just felt lost out there. They didn't quite know how to play around Kalios, and he himself didn't make any huge contributions, couldn't make a ton of space on the diva, and as a result, this really just went in the Titans' favor. Boston simply got outplayed, and as this kind of went on and on, their frustrations, grew and grew. And based on the expressions made by their players, it's not exactly looking good for them after this loss. Birdring basically rage swapped to Widow on Rialto. He looked pretty pissed off just for it to still not be enough. And after the series was over, everyone looked really sad on their end. We can have a look here. Let me just rewind a bit here. So, we're about to see Lee J. Gon put his hands in his face as he's basically crying. Twilight's gonna tip his camera over. Birdring looks pissed. Kalios is like, what the hell just happened? 3, 2, 1. Twilight's camera goes. He's done. He's probably crying. Lee J. Gon's gonna start crying. There it is. Like, I don't mean to laugh, but like, wow, you lose one game and your mindset's just totally gone. It's like their mentals are made of paper mache or something. Crazy stuff. So it's because of stuff like this and the fact that there's been rumors and the fact that they got 3-0'd by the Titans that people are saying, are the Boston Uprising finally boomed? In my opinion, we ain't ready to have that conversation just yet. It's still too early. One game does not define a season, especially early on. Maybe later in a year when it matters more. But 2 weeks into the season, one loss like this isn't going to destroy everything. How about we wait and see how they respond moving forward before being a judge? And also, we can't even just say that the Boston Uprising played poorly, because credit needs to be given to the Vancouver Titans. They played an excellent game, a masterclass performance. The DPS were literally keeping pace with Decay and Birdring, which is impressive on its own, but more importantly, all of their former players played with a chip on their shoulders. That being Crimzo, Punk, and Faith. They all played on Boston last year. They got cut, and clearly this game meant a lot to them. I mean, Punk and Faith thoroughly outplayed Kalios and Lee Jae Gon. Seriously. They played noticeably better from the start of the series until the end of it. Lee Jae Gon could not keep up with Faith on the break. Dude's looking like he might be the most improved player in the league right now. And Punk made Kalios look like a fool on the Diva. It was not close, both statistically and with what you saw with your eyes. You could tell that all of the former Boston players on Vancouver were waiting a long time for this moment to get revenge against their former team, and they made the most of it. So while Boston definitely are someone to keep an eye on, don't let their potential booming overshadow the great performance out of the Titans. But I'm not exactly done with the Boston Uprising just yet, as there is another headline over these last few weeks that needs to be discussed. And that's that the Boston Uprising are currently, unironically, the villains of the Overwatch League. And it's not even because of their team. That's probably the most wild thing about this all. Like, it's their social media presence. It's not the players. It's not the management. It's not the ownership like it's been in the past. It's not even because of Decay or Striker. It's the social media team or manager, whoever it is. They are tired of hearing the trash talk from all of the fans and this idea they're going to fold. They've dealt with it for over a month now, and at this point, it's become personal to the point where they've developed an ego. I don't know if this was planned or not, but they're tired of it. And they've been trolling people left and right. They're becoming the villains. They're going out there and putting out some interesting stuff that you usually wouldn't see from an OWL team. Some of the troll tweets they've been putting out have been pretty good. Like, for example, I'd say that this is good. Boston haters when we start 2-0 and don't boom. This is good. This is simple. It's to the point. Warren agrees with me. He unironically thinks the league needs more of this kind of behavior, which to a certain extent I agree with. And then you have whoever prayed for my downfall, you lost. Again, pretty harmless tweet. Gets the job done. Helps you play into that villain role without being too ridiculous. But some of these tweets are going a bit too far. Like this one with New York. This is just weird. Like, this is a personal issue with Boston, and you shouldn't be involving New York in this. Saying that they're the ones who are having internal issues because there's a break after going down 2-0 is quite ironic for a team that has been taking breaks during scrims, apparently, like long breaks. That seems a little weird, and I'm not exactly okay with that one. And also, I don't love this idea of them just absolutely pooping on alexyOWL and Spitfire, saying, oh, it's just New York and it's just Spitfire. What are the Boston haters going to say next after they beat Washington? And, like, I don't know. Part of me is like, it's whatever, you know, it's cool to trash talk teams, but why you gotta look down on them so bad? I mean, the London series they genuinely could have lost if it weren't for a last-second choke on push. So I don't know where they're getting this from. It's perfectly natural to say you only beat the alexyOWL and Spitfire and you need to show us more before we're convinced. Like, that's a necessary thing to do in this situation with all the stuff that's been going on apparently behind the scenes with the Boston Uprising. It's just a little weird to me. A bit too much. It's chill to trash talk your opponents. It's good for the sport, but don't be weird about it. Why you gotta make it personal, you know? It's a little too much for my taste. But the funny thing is, Boston are fully doubling down on this idea that they're the villains this year. They're literally out here Rick-rolling us now. Like, this seems like an actual apology you could make. Like, you've been annoying people pretty badly on Twitter, and maybe they would want to move on from their social media manager. You know, it's causing too much bad PR. But in reality, when you click this link, they're Rick-rolling us. They're Rick-rolling us in 2023. Hello? Come on now. Crazy stuff. They have fully embraced the villain role, and my feelings are mixed on the matter. Like I said, it is a little weird, but on the other hand, having villains who trash talk does make professional sports more entertaining. It just does. Having that emotional connection just makes it more interesting. What some fans do not realize is that this is excellent for engagement and that hate watching can actually be very good for sports. So long as it's done without crossing any big time boundaries and you're chill with it, I don't see a problem. Not everybody is going to be friends. Not everybody wants to be friends. You can dislike a team. You can dislike a city, an org, individuals. You can. There's nothing wrong with that. Some fans, I think, especially in esports who maybe don't pay attention to traditional sports and the culture that it has, are a little soft with this. It's just a natural part of the traditional sports world, and I think having some of that in the Overwatch League is going to do it some good moving forward. It's only a problem, though, when people start to get extreme. If you find satisfaction in simply watching a team fail, then go off, King. However, it is a little bizarre at the same time to see a social media manager of all people make a team so hated. They somehow, some way, made a team with Twilight, Smurf, and Birdring the villains of the Overwatch League. These are three of the most liked players ever, and I can't help but feel bad for them and some of the other guys on this team. Under normal circumstances, maybe outside of like Defiant Striker for the Defiant Striker haters, you'd want this team to succeed because of the players that you really like. Boston's roster, for the most part, is full of fan favorites. And yet, the whole freaking world is now against them for actions that they take no part of. Like, they don't care. I'm so torn. I like it, but I also don't. And I'm not exactly sure how long this type of villain arc could even last, or even if Boston can last for that matter. But for the foreseeable future, at least right now in the present, Boston are many Twitter users' enemy of the league, which can be a good and a bad thing. I'll let you decide. That's enough about Boston, though. You get the point. Those are the two major headlines with them. Did this Titans loss potentially make them boomed? And are they the villains of the Overwatch League now? Let's move on to the next big thing. I mean, I talked about the Charge in a video already. We can talk about them maybe a bit later. But for now, over in the East, I actually wanted to start with the Dynasty losing to the Shanghai Dragons, which caught a lot of people off guard. The Dynasty are not an amazing team. They've shown that so far. But I cannot say that I expected them to lose to the Shanghai Dragons. Seeing Shanghai pick up a win this early on is a little unexpected. And I'm honestly not sure what makes the bigger headline because of it, because both teams had their ups and downs. The Dynasty losing to the worst team in APAC is a good headline, but also the Dragons played a sick game at the same time and deserve some credit, just like with the Vancouver series in Boston. Obviously, though, on the side of Dynasty, this is a danger sign for sure. Losing to Shanghai is pretty unacceptable with how poor they have looked in all of their other games so far. How do you go from taking 3 maps off Infernal in your first game and looking pretty clutch for the most part, to losing to Shanghai? That is like, I don't know, some wild inconsistency. And it goes to show that this team probably needs to go through some growing pains right now. Coach Moon just has to make some adjustments, I'd say. And they've got to come fast. That's the crazy thing. At least if they want to do well in the spring stage. At 1-2, with the Spark coming up, and an Angry Fuel team looking to get back on track this weekend, you're in grave danger of starting your year 1-4, and in all actuality, it probably should have been 0-5 if Infernal didn't choke. You needed this Shanghai game. It is a brutal loss to have. And when I watched the Dynasty in this matchup, they just felt a little lackadaisical. Let me move back over to this. Go to the match details. Yeah, so Seoul Dynasty felt a little lackadaisical to me. Prophet at some points was getting randomly sniped. They were letting Fleta take a bit too much space for my liking. The backline was getting outplayed, and other Prophet, being referred to as PH on the broadcast right now, needs some serious work on that Sombra. Like, this was a close series that Dynasty most definitely could have won. Those EMPs, though, and how he was utilizing them did not help them. They were not it. I get that you want to take Hisu out of fights and everything, but I don't really see the point in trying to solo EMP him when he is one of the craftiest Sombras in the league and is going to see something like that from a mile away. Just go for the value ult, man. Go for somebody you know your team can dive on. Don't risk it. What's the point? Maybe that's just a young player having his weaknesses get exposed and his lack of experience. I don't really know. Dynasty, though, they're really not in the best place after this kind of loss. It was close, and I think they probably could have won Junkertown. They most definitely could have won Hollywood as well, but they didn't. They failed to execute. They let the Dragons beat them. However, though, I'd like to defend the Dynasty, even though I am worried about them. I think that, at least to a certain extent, the Dragons got bailed out by Hisu in this series, specifically on Junkertown. That was, without a doubt, the turning point of this series, as it took a last-second masterclass Widow performance on Attack Point A to steal that map away. If you missed it, here's what happened. He got a friggin' 4K. Swaps to Widow. There's like 15 seconds left. Boom. Kills Prophet.
That's exactly what I needed.
Boom. Kills other Prophet. Boom. Kills Void. Boom. Kills Lee Soo-min. Like, what do you even do about that? They were so close. They were so freaking close. And then Hisu just pulls that out of his butt because he's a god. And he kind of did the same thing on Junkertown Point B. And that's ultimately the reason the Dragons come home with this series, I think. That's the thing that boomed the Dynasty and allowed for Dragons to have that turning point on push. It's crazy, though, because Dynasty, with how they were playing for the most part on Junkertown, probably should have won it. This probably should have went to map 5. And if we're being honest, Dynasty won control at the start of the series. So there's a good chance they end up taking that in 5. But that Hisu bailout absolutely saved them. So, yeah. If that's what it takes for the Dragons to win, I don't know how many games they're going to win this season. That's not going to happen often, especially as the season progresses. Teams are going to adjust and not let those silly things happen. So maybe it's on the Dynasty for not paying enough attention. All I know, though, is Hisu had a crazy game, and the Dragons deserve this one because of how hard he was carrying. You know, he did everything to win. He's tired of losing and being on mediocre teams, so he gave it his all. And I think we all knew eventually Hisu would have a crazy game this year. Just not this early necessarily with all the rumors of Shanghai struggles. And it's quite clear right now that the change up to Iris at flex support has made this team a lot more stable. There's probably a better sense of comfort for the rest of this group, led by Viper and Hisu, to potentially at least give them a chance to win maps. This was a well-needed win for the Dragons, and while it was unexpected, it does completely change our perspective on them, at least to a certain extent. There is a chance for some upset potential, unlike what Scrims might have told us about them. And you never know what might happen next week. Dallas, who are definitely better on paper, are still very beatable with how they're playing right now. So you never know what could happen. The Dragons might be able to win a couple of games this stage and prove the entire world wrong. It seems unlikely, at least to me, that this is going to continue on a regular basis, but you never know. Speaking of the Dallas Fuel, they are who I want to bring up next. They are definitely worth touching base on because they're 0-3. The defending champions are currently winless through 2 weeks. Right now, they're obviously trying to find the right fit with this meta, but the consistency is lacking. And it's sad too because I don't think Dallas have been playing nearly as bad as people say. Maybe in the Guangzhou series they weren't too good. But since then, I've seen some bright spots, both on the Infernal and Spark game. The Spark match in particular, though, had some pretty good moments. Like, they could have won this series to me. Embracing the power of Hanbin's Junker Queen, kept them in this series for sure. And we still saw some good play out of Sparkle and Edison for sure throughout the entire week. The confidence is still there to a certain extent. They still feel like champions at certain moments. It's just that right now they're probably lacking in the mental game, that backline of theirs, as well as the general execution. Mentally, they're still adjusting to that new backline, and maybe no Fearless as well. To a certain extent, that is affecting their confidence and is not allowing them to do the same things they're used to doing. They're not hitting the go button, so to speak. They're not having that hive mind mentality we're used to, and it's forcing them to find themselves again. Execution-wise, though, they're making some pretty big mistakes at really important moments in these sets. Caliseo against the Spark is a really good example. What happened there was they were doing well. They were practically in the driver's seat to win that game and potentially take this to a map 5 and maybe win the series. They were playing well enough to get the job done, but then it all went to hell as the ultimate usage during the final stretch was pretty bad. They had a chance to definitely extend that lead a lot further than what it was, but Edison's EMPs were so up and down. A lot of the timing felt so off. Like his teammates just weren't there. They weren't there with him. They were not there to capitalize on the targets he was going after. I don't know if that's on him or the rest of the team, but there's some miscommunication going on there. They're not capitalizing on these potential game-winning EMPs. Dallas have to improve that coordination and communication and regaining that hive mind mentality they used to have, or they're going to continue to lose these types of games. There is a realistic chance this year that the Dallas Fuel start 0-5. I'm being dead serious. It seems very possible. It is not within the realm of possibilities for them to, play really bad from start to finish in these qualifiers. However, I don't think I'm going to throw in the towel just yet with the Fuel. Some of you might want to, and I think it's understandable. But Dallas still have the coaching, and they have the necessary core to get back on track. And this week's opponents present a great opportunity to do so. Dynasty and Dragons are the most beatable teams in APAC other than themselves right now. These are the easiest opponents they're going to get in these qualifiers outside of contenders rosters. If they cannot take advantage of the other teams trying to find their footing as former champions, their season is likely going to end in disaster. This is a massive week for the Dallas Fuel. Unlike with Boston, when I was saying it's just one game, for Dallas, this is their first 5. It is do or die time. We have to pay very close attention to the Fuel and how they adjust heading into this final week. They've got to dominate how they did before. That's how I see it. And on the topic of dominance and paying close attention, I think the Charge are certainly making a lot of headlines right now with their hot start to the season. I kind of already covered my thoughts on them extensively in a recent video, so be sure to check that out if you want my full thoughts. But what I will say, if you missed it, is they're playing some brilliant Overwatch, and they're probably the most fun team in the league currently. Everybody on that roster is making good contributions, and it starts with the DPS and their red-hot start to the year. If even Lee and Shy are standing no chance against you, then you're in a pretty great spot to dominate this league. Piggy, on the other hand, has also improved his flexibility, and I think the support line has been generally consistent. They're, without a shadow of a doubt, right now, the team to beat in the East. It's still very early on, but right now, I feel foolish for ranking them so low. This team looks motivated, they look like they're going to do something special, and I'm all for it because they haven't been good in 3 years. The only question now is, can the Guangzhou Charge sustain this level of play? I'm starting to wonder if the other teams with arguably better coaching and better rosters will adjust and send them back down to earth. Especially because, to a certain extent, the Spark DPS definitely had an off day. If they meet for a rematch, I don't know if the Charge win that easily. I have my doubts there. And eventually the DPS might cool off at least a little bit, so we'll have to see how they respond and how the other guys pick up the slack. These early wins, though, regardless, are crucial, and they certainly have improved the Charge's chances of having a great season. Building that early confidence goes such a long way. I think winning those first few games can easily help dictate the rest of your season and how it goes. They just have to keep their foot on the gas now and just not get lazy just because they beat the Spark, who had been giving them trouble in scrims. Infernal is about the only real challenge they have left in terms of Eastern teams here in the qualifiers, and if they get past them, then the Charge are in crazy good shape to take over. No matter what, though, the Charge so far in the spring are the biggest surprise. They are incredibly fun to watch, and I'm very much hoping to watch them play in the midseason madness, as they're playing some great Overwatch. Choice A1 and Jimmy are absolutely amazing. Yeah, just taking a sip of water. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to touch upon in the East is the fact that it is a giant mess right now. If I move over to the standings page here, it feels pretty crazy, as the Charge are 3-0, haven't lost a single map yet. The Infernal have pulled ahead of the Spark in terms of the standings because the Infernal have gotten 2 3-0s. And, the Dragons are ahead of Dallas. The Dynasty are ahead of Dallas. Dallas have won 1 map so far in 3 games. What is going on over there in the East? I really don't know anymore. Every game feels like a coin toss. You expect the Spark to beat the Charge. They don't. You expect the Fuel to be playing better than this. They don't. You expect the Dragons to lose every game and get 3-0'd pretty easily, but they don't. I remember waking up during this weekend and just not even knowing what's going on anymore. When I saw the Charge 3-0 the Spark and the Dragons beat the Dynasty, I was done, man. I was so done. When I woke up and saw these two scores both in a row, I was boomed beyond belief. I don't know anymore, man. I just don't know. The East is totally unpredictable. I feel like the Charge and Spark are the best teams right now, but I can't say for sure. What if next week the Infernal beat the Charge? What if next week the Infernal beat the Spark? What if the Dallas Fuel suddenly figure something out? Like, I just don't know. At this point, I just want to flip a coin for every single matchup that isn't like the Charge games. Even those could still be unpredictable. The East is just totally booming me. Like, they might be booming me more than they ever have before, and that's saying something because usually I'm very off with the East, but this year in particular might be my worst yet. The Charge are throwing me in for a loop. The Fuel are throwing me in for a loop. Everyone right now feels like they can beat each other. This region is a gigantic mess. There's no stability whatsoever, and we haven't even gotten to the contenders teams yet. What's going to happen when they get to play in the knockouts soon? What on earth, man? What on earth are we going to witness? I don't know. I do not know. I am boomed. I am terrified, and I'm ready to get just about every pick 'em wrong in this region moving forward. But it does make it fun, I won't lie to you. Because of how unpredictable it is, it makes it a bit more enjoyable than what the West is bringing out right now. Not to say that the West is having bad games, because they also have some fun games, but a lot of their stuff is a bit more clear-cut and set in stone, with usually only like one or two upsets happening once in a while. In the East, we have stuff just making no sense whatsoever. So that's the region to watch. Like, if you don't stay up like me, you should still watch the VODs because it's crazy over there. The entertainment value is through the roof. And I get the feeling that it's only just begun. Speaking of the West, though, and predictability, I wanted to get into a couple of teams from there before we wrap up for today. So, first team is Toronto Defiant, who I think are flying under the radar as a team that we might need to start worrying about in terms of poor performance. Because it seems like the first week might have done something to their mental. They did not look good at all in week 2. Almost losing to alexyOWL is unacceptable. I know they probably did not prepare that much for them. They're probably focusing a lot more on Florida because that's the game you want to win. That's a big one. But that doesn't mean you should be going to a map 5 against alexyOWL. I can't. I don't know how you let this happen. New York are not a very good team, at least on paper. They've been pretty up and down this entire season. Your roster is obviously way better. Your synergy is obviously way better. But you let New York just push you around in the second half of that series and almost pull off a reverse sweep. That says a lot about where Defiant's mindset might be at and how badly that week 1 might have affected their confidence. Because if you remember, they almost beat San Francisco. Like, if they'd beaten that game, it could have done a lot for them. And the Gladiators game, while they lost, was winnable, but Gladiators kind of boomed them in a way. And now I'm starting to think Defiant are a very momentum-based team because of stuff like that. They're in big trouble if they're going to get a 5-mapper against alexyOWL, struggle throughout, and show weaknesses throughout most of their team, like outside of like Hydron and maybe Ultraviolet. I don't know what's up with them. I'm expecting more out of a team that is primarily made of Team USA, former American Tornado dominant. You expect more out of them. I don't know if it's the meta shift, that might be part of it, but they're looking like crap right now, especially in that Mayhem game. Like, oh my god. That freaking control map was an absolute steamroll. It was like 200% to 0. Defiant stood absolutely zero chance. They were playing Pharah against them, doing whatever they wanted to. They couldn't even counter with Echo, with the Speedily Echo. They had absolutely no answer for the Mayhem. The Mayhem put up a masterclass performance on Hollywood. Junkertown really wasn't close. Defiant could not find their grip, I'd say, during week 2. Even against alexyOWL. It was rough. Maybe the meta's going in a place that makes them weaker, though. Or maybe it's the fact that some of their other players need to start stepping up, or a combination of the two. Because right now it feels like Ultraviolet is doing as much as he can, but he can't do it on his own. Even Hydron hasn't been dominating as much as what we saw in the Pro-Am. He needs to be that guy again for Defiant to have a chance this season. He's got to really pop off for them to play at their absolute best. But of course, it's going to go beyond him. It's going to go beyond Ultraviolet. Those two being mainstays is important, but I need to see more out of Kaluj. I need to see more out of Speedily, out of OG, out of Sam, and maybe Surmajet if they can reincorporate him somehow. Something's got to give here. Otherwise, Defiant are going to be sinking really fast. Like, there's just not enough playmaking on that team. Speedily, we keep hearing about how he has so much potential, but he's not fulfilling it right now. He's got to step up. In the Pro-Am, he showed us flashes, but it's one thing to do it in the preseason and then execute in the regular season. It's two different things. If he was able to step up, that would help. If him and Hydron are firing on all cylinders, that's going to increase your chances. But if he can't do it in an Echo or Genji meta, what's he going to do? What's his plan? He's got to improve on that Tracer really fast. They've got to do better on Mei compositions really fast. They've got to figure out these rush comps with Ryan and Ramatra. Like, they can't depend on just Kaluj's D.Va and Sigma to win a series. They've got to play around these other compositions better. And it's crazy, too, because earlier on during the season, their rush comps looked pretty solid, especially in Pro-Am. The coordination was there, but now suddenly it's not? I don't know. I don't know if they're having a hard time with all of these different open meta ideas, or if it's something else completely. Maybe their confidence just got shook up after losing that winnable game to Shock. No matter what, though, Defiant have a lot of work to do, and I think week 4, when they play again, is going to be very telling on if they even have a chance of being one of the higher seeded teams this season. That Boston game is going to be huge. If they can beat Boston in week 4, that would help a lot. They're going to beat Valiant, but if they were to start this season with just one win in the qualifiers, that's going to change people's perspectives on them a lot. So keep an eye on Defiant. They've got to channel their, not their inner demons, their inner Zen mode, I guess I should say. They got to focus up, and they got to focus up now. They're in big time danger, just like with the Dallas Fuel, for example. Anyway, enough on Defiant. I think you get the idea of where they're at. I thought it was worth bringing them up because they're off to a disappointing start. But let's talk about the LA Gladiators, our last subject of today's video. They are them. They are still surprising us to this day. I gotta stop sleeping on them. Not we, as in you guys. I should stop sleeping on the Gladiators, because they continuously do this. They continuously show me that they might be the most clutch team in the Overwatch League and the most clutch team in recent memory with how they've been performing in some of these matches. Sometimes they don't look good, but other times they don't. It feels like every single week they have the potential to upset one team and then get blown out in the other. It seems like they're prepping for one game more than the others, and that's it. I don't know. It's just that last week, the fact that they beat Mayhem makes me think this. Nobody thought that the Mayhem were going to lose to the Gladiators, I'd say, for the most part. Some people on the desk did. Some other fans did, sure. But Mayhem are generally perceived as the better team. And the Gladiators also had to play the Reign this week. So the fact that they were able to at least win one of those games is huge for their chances of making the tournament. And it goes to show that they're an upset threat at any given moment. Their guys just live for the clutch. If they can make it to that map 5, it seems like they're going to beat you. It's almost like, I mean, excuse my language here, but it almost seems like they have a fetish for map 5s or something. They love it. When they can get there, they go all out. Kevster's a big-time clutch performer. Funny Astro is. Lastro, Dante, Kai, Yaki, all these guys have proven that throughout the years that they thrive for the spotlight. So the Gladiators are basically just one big box of clutch. That's how I see them. And this Mayhem game is the perfect example. A lot of people argue that Mayhem probably should have wrapped this up on push, but still, Gladiators always find ways to extend the series and not boom when things are not going their way, like when they lost 2 maps in a row. They're able to maintain their composure and play clutch. So long as they can extend the series and they don't get taken out early, it always seems like they have a chance to upset you. I'm really worried for a lot of these top tier teams. Like Houston and the Reign were able to beat it, but it seems like most top teams are always going to have to worry and prepare for them, even if they look significantly better on paper. The Glads just have that magic to them this season. And I'm wondering if they have any other big games coming up where they can upset these teams. It doesn't look like they will for the rest of these qualifiers, but man, if they make it to the tournament, which is looking like they will based off of their strength of schedule, some of these teams like Mayhem and Reign and Outlaws and maybe Shock, they're going to have to watch out for this Glads team, man. They're coming for you. They are hungry to prove all of the haters wrong and to live for these clutch moments. This seems to be their calling this season. They're going to be the team that plays a lot of close games. They're what the Outlaws were last year. And it seems to me like they're going to win a lot of those close games because of the type of roster they've assembled and how good they are at staying calm and composed and using that energy as an advantage rather than something that makes them shaky and make big mistakes. We already saw it in the Pro-Am multiple times. We just saw it against the Mayhem. They got revenge for them for that Pro-Am finals matchup. So the sky's the limit for this Gladiators team, and they might be the scariest dark horse in the entire league. We know they're not like a top 3 team in the league, most likely, maybe not even top 5, but they always have the potential to reach that level on a game-to-game basis. On paper, they're never going to be the best. They're just not well-rounded enough. Their communication might not be enough. They might not have enough star power either. At certain positions, they might not be flexible enough. But when push comes to shove, if given that chance, if they're feeling themselves, they can always upset your team, no matter how good they are. It's just that it feels inconsistent, like it depends on the moment. The Mayhem, they fell for it. We saw the Outlaws fall for it and the Reign fall for it during the Pro-Am. But when teams are good and prepared for them, they're not a problem. Glads are a weird team, but all it takes is them getting hot at the right time, and they could not just be a huge tournament threat, but also a huge playoff threat. They have that kind of long-term success potential because of the roster they've assembled to always be scary at any moment in the season, because of how smart their guys are, because of the star power they're rocking with at certain places. Everything's winnable so long as you have this type of team. It's just, can they do it consistently? That's going to be what we have to see moving forward if we wish to rate the Gladiators as a true, like, S-tier elite team. They're really good, but they still have a bit more work to do. I'm excited, though, regardless for Glads. They look like probably one of the most fun teams in the league. Them and the Charge seem like the most entertaining teams to watch, and I'm super pumped to see what both of them do and maybe, hopefully, see them play in the midseason madness later this season. But, yeah. I think that's basically everything in terms of this rambling and my overall thoughts on what happened during the week and some of the main storylines. I hope you guys enjoyed this first podcast episode. If you want to see some more, definitely hit the like button. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. What kind of changes would you like to have this have? Like, let me know. Seriously, I'm open to things. I want to make this as good as I can. If it's something you guys do want to see consistently, in fact, there's a lot of good talking points to always have. I had a lot of fun doing this, so I'll probably do some more soon. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And maybe I'll get going on putting this on other podcast platforms too, like Apple Music or whatever it's called, Apple Podcast and Spotify. We'll see, though. For now, we're going to stick to YouTube and see what you guys think in this experimental episode, so to speak. So, like the video, subscribe if you're new. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.